I hadn't been playing accordion for long when I realised that most of the tunes I want to play aren't arranged for accordion. Often the best transcription I can find is for piano, or maybe just a lead sheet with chords, or there might not be sheet music at all and I have to learn it by ear. If you want to write a piece, or arrange one for accordion, and then have other people play it with you, or if you want to remember it years later, the best way to do that is to write it down. If you play in a band or club, maybe there's one person in the club who spent hundreds of quid on Finale and Sibelius and writes down the arrangements. But then you only play the pieces that they like to play, and if they write stuff in a quirky way that's hard for you to read, you just have to put up with it. But if you could make your own sheets, then you could get your band or club to play the pieces you like too. So today you're going to fix that problem by learning to make sheet music with Lilypond. This is quite a long video, but I'm going to show you the whole process for turning this lead sheet into this professional looking part. There are chapter marks on the timeline, so you can skip any topic you're not interested in, or easily jump back if I go too fast. The basics of Lilypond are the same for any instrument, but it'll start getting more accordion specific when we get to the left-hand part.
Lilypond is a free software tool that turns funny looking text files into professional looking scores. And it's really free, it's not just an ad for a subscription service. Go to Lilypond's website and here's the download link. You can ignore the stuff in this first box for now and just scroll down and pick the right file for your operating system. And this will actually download you a zip file. And you can see the zip file has a folder called Lilypond and then the version number. So if we do extract all, you can choose to put this where you like. I've got mine in a place called C program files x86 Lilypond. And you can see I've already got an older version there. So if I select the folder, it will put it into a new directory there called Lilypond 224.3. And because I've chosen program files, I needed to give admin privileges for the extract operation. If you put it in somewhere like your user directory or your documents directory, it will still work fine just the same. Now it'll take a short while for the files to be extracted from the zip file. While we're waiting for that, we can just take a quick look at the manuals tab here. And you'll see Lilypond comes with a few manuals. The basic one is called the Learning Manual, and that's a guide you can follow start to finish to learn all the basics, just like this video. There's also the notation reference here, which is structured so you can look up a particular topic. For instance, if you want to enter a glissando or type in the lyrics, you can find out how to do that in the notation reference. Lilypond itself is just a command that turns text files into PDFs, so we'll also be using Frescobaldi, which is a free graphical application for creating Lilypond files. Let's download Frescobaldi from the download page, and again, you just want the right version for your operating system. There's an installer for Windows. Run the installer. When you've installed Frescobaldi, you'll need to go into its settings in Edit Preferences and in Lilypond Preferences. I've already got a version, but you won't have any there. So you need to click Add, and then just find the directory that you extracted the zip file into. And then go bin lilypond.exe. And you can give it a specific name. You would want to do this if you had a custom version of Lilypond, but you probably don't need that. And then since I've now got two versions, I'll just set this one as the default. You only need to do this the first time you start Frescobaldi. I'd suggest you pause the video now and install Lilypond and Frescobaldi so that you can follow along with the rest of the video. You don't need any kind of account or password for either of these. So when you open Frescobaldi, it'll give you a new file with this version thing at the top. Now this is a command that tells Lilypond what version of Lilypond you wrote the file for. So if you come back to the file later with a newer Lilypond version, maybe where they've changed some things, then the file will still come out the same way it did before. Every Lilypond command starts with a backslash just to mark it out. On the right of the window, you get these two tabs, one for music view, and the music sheet that we write is going to show up here. And there's also a documentation browser, which is just a quick way to get the documentation from Lilypond's website. You might want to have the notation reference open as you go along when you're working with it. So if you come to do something that you don't know how to do, you can easily find it in here. If you're my age, you might remember typing in ringtones on your Nokia 3310 with just a combination of letters and numbers. And Lilypond is a bit like that. I'm going to start by adding include english.ly at the top. And you can see as I type that Frescobaldi's suggesting what I might want to type in. So I just press enter to accept the suggestion and then add the double quote to finish. And what this lets us do is use the English note names. Different languages have different names for the notes, and Lilypond can work with those different languages. So this lets me call the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B with S and F for sharp and flat. To start with, we need to add these curly braces. And you can see that as soon as we add those, it automatically runs Lilypond to generate the music that we've written. Now, we haven't written any music yet, so we've just got some errors saying that it's a 0 duration score. So let's put in some notes, which we can do by writing the note names. These curly braces group notes together into what Lilypond calls sequential music. That is a sequence of notes that come after one another in time. All the notes for the right hand are going to be in one sequential music with these curly braces around them. And you can see that when we typed those in, Frescobaldi ran Lilypond and generated this sheet for us. When you click on something in the Lilypond file, or like this, it will highlight in the music view which note you clicked on. And it works the other way around. If you hover in the music view, it will highlight the notes. And if you click on a note in the music view, the cursor on the left side will jump to the note. It makes it easier to find your way around, especially in a long piece. Now, these are very low notes, and by default, Lilypond puts things in the bass clef octave, the octave below middle C. To move them up an octave, we can use the apostrophe. So after the pitch of each note comes the octave that note is in. And you can also move them down with the comma, because they look like little up and down arrows. And you can obviously do multiple octaves up and down with multiple commas or multiple apostrophes. It's a bit tedious to do that for every note, so it's best to use the relative command. Relative takes one note that tells it just the starting point, which octave to start in, and then a sequential music. And now each note in the sequential music will automatically pick the octave that makes it closest to the previous note. And then the comma and apostrophe move the note an octave up and down from there. This means we can write a full scale, and when we get back to the C, it will be in the octave above the C we started from, because it's close to the B, which in turn is close to the A, and so on. However, if you try to jump by a fifth or more, for example, if we cut out that piece of the scale, it's gone down instead of up, because the G below the staff is only a fourth away from middle C, whereas the G that's up here is a fifth above. It's further away. So here we just need to add the apostrophe to the G to make it go back to the right place, and all the notes after it will follow. Don't worry too much about the octaves. When relative picks the wrong octave, it's pretty obvious where it happens, as it was here, because all the notes after it will be in the wrong octave. All you have to do is find the first note that was wrong, and then add an apostrophe or comma there to put it in the right place, and all the others will follow along. Also, if you type R instead of a pitch, you get a rest. Now, after the pitch and octave comes the length. If you're used to American style note names, quarter notes, eighth notes, and so on, instead of crotchets and quavers, it's very easy to put the lengths in because you just use those same numbers to specify the length. So say we want eighth notes, or quavers as we say in English. We put it in 8. And as you can see, if you don't specify a length, each note just takes the same length as the note before it. So the 8 is for quavers, 4 is for crotchets or quarter notes, 2 is for half notes or minims, and so on. You can also use a dot to get dotted notes. So 4 dot is a dotted quarter note, a dotted crotchet. 8 dot is a dotted quaver, and so on. So 8 dot 16 is a pretty common figure in music. And you'll see here that Lilypond is automatically choosing whether to beam these or not, according to where they are in the bar. If we change this quarter note to a quaver, it changes the beaming so that it's more logical. One beat is beamed together. Missing the length of the note also works with pitches. If you just give a length but no pitch, then it just uses the same pitch as the note before. That makes repetitive music very quick to type in. So now we've got a pitch, an octave, and a length. After the length, you can add any articulations or other marks, such as staccato or legato. So for a staccato mark, you use a hyphen followed by a dot, and you get the little dot. And for a legato, it's a hyphen followed by another hyphen, because that's what the legato line looks like. There's a whole load of different articulations you can put in, and there's a table in the notation reference with examples, so you can find the mark you're looking for, even if you don't remember the musical name for it. Along with marks, you can also add slurs with brackets, curly round brackets. And you can see it's given me an error because I've only put in the start of the slur, but I haven't told it where to finish. So it says unterminated slur, and the error message tells me where it is. And you can see that Frescobaldi is highlighting the problem line in red. So say I want up to the B to be a slur, I'll put a closing bracket in there, and they all get a slur around them. Now, even though these are brackets, the brackets don't go around the notes that you want to be a slur. The bracket is attached to the first note of the slur here. Finally, once you've finished a note, you've got the pitch, the octave, the length, and any marks that you want. You can also tie it to the following note with tilde. On a UK keyboard, that's the one that's shift hash. Don't try to use a tie when you want a slur, or Lilypond will give you an error. You can only tie together notes that have the same pitch. And as you can see, ties work across bar lines like this. Today, I'm going to be engraving this piece, which my friend Bert Santilli wrote. It goes like this. He's kindly given me permission to use his music as an example. It's just a lead sheet with chords, so it's exactly the kind of thing where after you've decided how to interpret the chords, how to play them on accordion, you might want to write down what bass notes you've played and share it with your group. So let's start with a new file, and we'll add our include english.ly, and we'll press enter again to accept the autocomplete. Now it starts on a D, so we'll put it in the octave above middle C, and we already know how to do the pitches and durations. I'm going to put it on a new line. You can put new lines anywhere you like in these files. Lilypond doesn't care about the new lines, so it's just easy to structure it how you like it. 1 bar or 2 bars per line is usually pretty good to avoid it becoming really hard to read. So we'll just start with our D, which is an 8th note, and then a G. And you'll see, actually, what I've done here is because I haven't put the matching brace at the end, Lilypond can't possibly understand this file. All of the curly braces need to match up. So it hasn't started engraving it yet. So if I finish off by putting the other curly brace, that gives it enough to start, and we can watch the notes come out as we go along. So another D8 there, and then an A, and because the A is a fifth away from the D, we can immediately see it's put that in the wrong octave. It's gone down a fourth rather than up a fifth. So we'll just use our apostrophe here to put that up. And then after we've got the pitch and the octave, we put in the length to make that a crotchet, a quarter note. And then we'll have to do a comma again with the D to get that back down there by a fifth. And now we have a B flat. And again, we have to go up. And it's written this B flat as an accidental because we haven't put in a key yet. So let's look at how to put in the key signature now. And it's very easy. There's just a key command. So we'll put in key. And what key are we in? Well, it's two flats. So that's B flat major. Though it's actually probably in G minor. It doesn't, for the point of view of writing the music, it doesn't matter whether it's in a major or a minor key. So we'll just say B flat major. And it's B flat major. So you write that, and then it puts the key signature. Now you see on the music, of course, if you just see a B on its own, when we're in this key, the B means B flat. But in our file, we have to put in B flat every time. If you just put in B, you get a B natural, and it will put in the accidental there. The key signature doesn't change how Lilypond interprets the notes that you write down. It just changes how it draws them in the file. So you always have to put in your B flats, your E flats, your F sharps, if you're in a key with sharps. And it means that you can change this and make the whole piece be in a different key, and you don't change what notes you've written down. If we wanted to change this to E flat, to add a third flat, well, our A that we put in as an A natural is still an A natural, but now it has an accidental in front of it, and so on. So the other thing about this note is that it's tied across the bar line. So we want to tie, and then we'll put in another B flat. And then back down to a G. You might have noticed that Lilypond's just added this bar line without me asking for it. Lilypond keeps track of the time signature, and it counts where you are in the bar, because of course it matters to how the music is spaced out on the page. If you try to put a note that doesn't fit in the bar, for instance, if we put in a crotchet here, a quarter note for the B flat, it'll still print it, but you'll see it takes up the space across the bar line. And now the next note has a little gap in front of it because it's spacing it out wrong. So the rest of the music will just look wrong after this happen. And it can be quite subtle and confusing when it happens. So Lilypond has a feature to help you check that you've put in the music correctly, which is if you put in this vertical bar, that's a bar line check. If Lilypond sees this line and it's not at the end of a bar, it'll give you a warning down here. And you can see, again, it will make the line where the error is go red. Bar check failed at 1 of 8. And you can see it's after that B flat. So I just need to tell it to tie the B flat, turn that into 2 quavers. And now the bar check that I've put in lines up with where the bar line is in the real music. So there's no error. But the bar check doesn't change how the music gets written out. It's just for checking that you've put the music in right. So it's good to put those in every bar. So you might be thinking at this point, this is all well and good, but what if the music isn't in 4? What if it's in 3? How would it know when to put the bar lines in then? And again, we can solve that with another command, which is time. Time lets us put in the time signature. So if it's 3/4, we put 3/4. And you'll notice that my bar check's now wrong because there shouldn't be a bar line here. The bar line comes in earlier. And you can have all kinds of time signatures, and it can even do compound time and all kinds of modern things. But the default is 4/4, so we're just going to take out time and it will be 4/4. Or common time, as it's usually written in today's engraving. So in 4/4, we've got up to this G, and then the next note is actually a rest. So we'll just put in R, and we automatically get a quarter note without having to specify the length again. But then we want a quaver. And as I said earlier, you can not put in the pitches again. But here, if we just try to put an 8, it thinks that 8 belongs with this R. This could all be one note because it's got a pitch followed by a duration. So this turns into one note. So I could put a 4 here. So it knows this is one note, this R4, and then this 8 has to be a second note. But you can see the 8 actually repeats the last pitch. It doesn't repeat the rest. And again, this makes it very easy if you're doing repetitive music because it remembers what the note was, even with a rest in between them. So what we actually want here is another R so that we get this R gives us a quarter note, a crotchet rest. And then the second one gives us this 8th note or quaver rest. Or we could do this with a dot. It's just up to you which you prefer. And I typed that in wrong. Oops, there we go. So then the rest of the music just goes along in the same way. And you see here, I've got my bar check error. And I'll just fit width there so that we can see the whole piece. And my bar check failed after this E because it's further along than it should have been. And that's because I've messed up these notes here. And I also was a bit silly. I didn't put a bar check in at the previous bar, even though I should have done, because I wanted there to be a bar line after the A. And if I put a bar check there, it would have told me that the error was actually before the A. Oh, it's because I made this a crotchet, a quarter note, and it should have been an 8th note. But you'll notice when I change this 8, I have to change that one to a 4. Otherwise, it would have followed the previous note. So this is why it's a good idea to put bar lines in as you go along so that you immediately find out if something was wrong. So now we've come to this E, and this is a bit special. Apart from anything else, it's gone up instead of down. So let's put in a comma here, and you'll notice the comma goes before the length. But it's also put in an accidental mark here because it's an E natural. And the key plays E flats. E flats is in the key. And we wanted an E natural here. So I didn't have to put in anything special to get a natural mark. It just happened. And I've already put in the tie here, but I haven't put in the rest of the note, which is going to be our first dotted minim or dotted half note. And then a quarter or crotchet rest. And I'll put in another bar line check to check that we've not messed up those lengths there. So that's the first line of music done. Let's just carry on as we go. Oh, now I wasn't really looking at the music as I was going along there. And I see that I ended up kind of in the wrong octave. All of these notes are way lower than they should be. So I'll just look back and see which note is the first one that looks wrong. And it's this G. This G should have gone up, but it went down. Because obviously from a C to a G is a 5th, and it's chosen the 4 down instead. But then the next C has now gone up, and that wants to go back down. Which means the A will want to go back up. And now after we've done that, they're all right. And we can carry on with the rest of this second line. And you can see again, I have to specify that the A flat is an A flat every time, because you always have to put in the real pitch of the note. The key signature and the conventions like flats apply for the whole bar doesn't affect what you put in. But Lilypond then, sorry, it's a bit small now. Lilypond will only put the flat on the first one in the sheet music because it knows that that's how you write sheet music. You put in one flat and it affects the whole bar. And then again, the very next note is a B natural. And so we get a natural sign there. If we did want to put in this flat again, you know, sometimes it's useful to have a reminder. You can just put in a question mark here, and it puts in a reminder flat sign in little brackets. Or if you put an exclamation mark, it just gives you another flat sign. And it's the same with natural notes. If you put in an exclamation mark on this G, it'll put in a natural sign, even though the note would be natural anyway. So those exclamation marks and question marks let you put in notes that don't really conform to engraving practice. So you've got the freedom to override and to make decisions however you want. I'm just going to make this a bit wider so that we can see a bit more, and then fit width again. So then after this B natural, we've got an F, and that was a crotchet or eighth note, sorry, a quaver or eighth note F. And then another tie. And you'll notice I'm not always doing the same thing with the spaces. You can put a space in between the F and the 8, and you can put a space before the tie, and you can put a space before the barcheck. And it's entirely up to you just what you want the file to look like. More spaces can be more readable, but I usually, when there's a note tied across a bar, I usually put the tie right up against the bar line like that. So it's obvious that's why I've put a tie in there. And you'll see as we have gone along, I've been putting line breaks in my file every 2 bars. The line breaks don't change where Lilypond decides to put the line breaks. It just keeps going until it comes to the end of a line. And, you know, like any kind of desktop publishing or word processor software, it can change around where the line breaks are just to make the notes fit better on the page. So let's carry on and do the rest of the piece. You can see here I've had my first sharp note, and sharp is just S for sharp. I wanted to tie this B flat. Oops, I've just read the piece of music wrong. So this was the B flat there, so I want more B flats. Now you can see something I've done here is something I usually do if I'm tying a note across a bar, which is not to put in the pitch again. Because as I said earlier, if you put in just the length and no pitch, it's the same pitch as the note before, which is always what you want with a tie. So if you're just tying a note, you can just put in the pitch, and it's really quick. If you've got long notes that are tied across bars, you might say instead of this crotchet after the C, it might be something like that. It's tied across lots of bars, but we don't have to put in the C every time. It's just really quick to type that in. Oh, and you can see I've just made a typing mistake here. Octave marks must precede duration. I put in D4 and then the comma. I just typed it wrong when I was typing it in. And Lilypond told me what was wrong. So I just fixed that by putting it the other way around. Done, no problem. Well, I've got my bar check wrong there. So my bar check failed here, but this one at the end of this line was fine. So I know that the error is in this bar. And it's because I had the usual thing of I was trying to be a bit too concise here, and I've ended up with R8, whereas what I wanted was RD8. There you go. And now it's correct. So that's the first half of this piece, and let's just say we're going to end it here. So we put in fine as a command, and that gives you this the heavy bar line that you always get at the end of a piece. And we won't look at the second section for now, but what we need to do is look at the bass clef. So we've got these chord names, and just for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to interpret them in the simplest way possible. So I'm going to do a traditional oom-pah bass with this. The first thing we'll need for the bass clef is to add a bit more structure. So when you've got a Lilypond file, there's actually a staff object that has all the notes in. Now, if you don't specify one, if you just have just some music on its own, it will automatically create a treble clef staff like this. But now we want more than one staff, so we need to separate those somewhere, and we need to make the staff more explicit. So what we want is a piano staff, and that gives us the little curly brace thing that you get in piano and accordion music. And within each piano staff, we're going to put the music that we want. So this is all the stuff for the right hand, and then this is the stuff for the left hand. But we don't want the right hand and the left hand to be one after another. We want them to be in parallel in time. We play the left and the right hand at the same time. So we can't use these curly braces for sequential music. Instead, we have to use these double angle brackets. Now, double angle brackets are like curly braces. They put two sections of music together. They put notes together, but they're parallel music instead. So instead of playing them one after another, or instead of writing them horizontally on a page, they come vertically in parallel. So here we've got one staff with the right hand music, and then another staff with the left hand music. And our left hand music staff only has one note in it so far, but we can fix that in a moment. First, we don't want it to be a treble clef staff. We want it to be bass clef. So we'll put clef bass, and that will change it to bass clef. And saying clef bass with this clef command doesn't just change the picture that's drawn here. It also changes how the notes are interpreted. So you can see when we added this, the note jumped to the right place. So here it's a very low C. But when we put in clef bass, it's drawn in the right position on bass clef. Now, I tend not to use the relative command for my bass clef music because usually you're jumping in octaves, right? You want something that's in the low half of the bass clef for the bass notes, and then for the chords, you write those on the top half of the staff. So when you're alternating, the relative thing doesn't help, so I tend not to use that. Instead, I tend to use fixed. Fixed just sets the starting octave for your music. All of my C's now are in this octave. If I were to write a little scale on the left hand, they're all in this octave. And even though the C is a big jump here, it doesn't follow the octave of the note before because we're not in relative mode. It's just staying in this one octave, which is the bottom octave on the bass clef. And you'll notice something else here, which is that we don't have the same key signature that we had in the treble clef, because of course Lilypond doesn't just do accordion music, it also does orchestral music where different instruments might be playing in different keys. So that just means we have to repeat the key command for each staff. And the same applies if you're doing parts for multiple accordions like duets. And you can see here, because I've put it in B flat major, the E natural and the B natural have been given natural signs. So let's look at our chords, and we'll just do the simplest interpretation. Now, obviously, there's more than one way of writing accordion music. And the easiest way is if you just have the bass notes in the bottom half, and then a note in the top half. I still want crotchets, don't I? A note in the top half means you play the major chord. So we can do this. And my D's ended up on the middle here, which is not awful. I could lift it up. If I wanted to be clear, I could lift it up to there. But this is just a question of like how you like to write your bass music. So I'm just going to leave it on the middle line there. But I want to say this is supposed to be a D7. So I want to... Oh, and the G was supposed to be a G minor. So I want to say... I want to put the little M above it to show it's a minor. And it's easy to do this because text marks above notes work like articulations. And we did articulations at the start. They just go on the end. And if you put some text in double quotes, you get a letter like this. And the same, I put a 7 in double quotes and I get the text 7. Now to put these below, but usually when I'm writing bass music, I want my I want my chord names to be above. So if I replace the hyphen with a little hat, which is Shift and 6 on a UK keyboard, it goes up. If you use the hyphen, and this is the same with any articulation like legato marks, if you use hyphen, then Lilypond will automatically decide which side to put it on. If you use a hat, it will always go up. And if you use an underscore, which is Shift hyphen, then it will always go down. And because I want these to always go up, I'll use the little hat, the circumflex. So we've got G, G minor, D, and then D7. I'll put in a bar line check here. Oops, and I typed the wrong quotes there. There you go. And I can go along like this, and I can put in the M's every time. If I don't want to put in the M's every time, it's probably not worth it. You can just leave them out when you don't want them. Now, the bass music's a lot more repetitive than the treble music. For example, this G minor goes along for a couple of bars, and where we've got a G minor 6th at the end of the line, I'm just going to put G minor for now. I'm not going to think about different ways of interpreting the chords just for the sake of the example. But that means that this G minor pair thing is going to happen 2, 4, 5 times. And I don't want to type it in, and I don't want to copy and paste, because if I copy and paste, then if I get one wrong, they'll all be wrong. So instead, I'm going to use a feature that Lilypond has, which is for repeats. So repeat, unfold. So with this command, you say repeat, and then this is going to be the kind of repeat. And for now, we'll just say unfold, which means it writes it out in full. And then I said I wanted 5 of them. So it repeats it 5 times. And then I can go on. This was supposed to be a C7 flattened ninth, but I'll just put C7 here. So. And do I want it to be the one at the bottom? No, I'll have it the one that's just below the middle line, because that's a bit easier. There we go. So that's the first line of the source music. And we can see Lilypond's actually managed to fit a bit more on one line than whatever was used to produce the lead sheet. There's also other kinds of repeats in music. For example, you might want the actual repeat signs. If you've got a long passage of repeated music that's more than a couple of notes, you might want to write that out. This piece doesn't have them, but let's just assume it does for the sake of an example. So let's say that from here to the end is going to be repeated. So we'll start from this A flat, and I clicked on it to find it in my file. So I'm going to use a repeat here. And if I say repeat unfold again, it will just write out the whole thing twice, which is not really what you want with a long repeat. You'll get really long sheet music. So instead, if we change unfold to Volta, which is the technical name for what these repeats are called, it puts the whole thing in these repeat bar lines with the double dots to show you that it's a repeat. Those are the two main kinds of repeats. There are other kinds of repeats as well that are less commonly used, and I'll come on to those in another video, I think. For now, you can just use these unfold repeats to write out some repetitive music as many times as you like. And you can use these Volta repeats to put actual repeat signs in your music. The thing with this structure of having them both be repeats is that it's really easy to change. If you're writing some music in and you think, actually, I would like this music to be written out in full. I don't want it to be a repeat. It's really easy to change it back and forth between writing it out and putting in repeat marks. And that's the same whether it's a long section or a short section. So let's take out our example now, since our piece doesn't really have repeats. And let's go on to the next line in the music. But let's say, obviously, there's more than one way of writing these accordion bases. And some people prefer, rather than putting the letters in like this, they'd rather write the chord out in full. So for the next line, let's do that. So that was our C7 flat 9, and our next chord's going to be an F minor. So we'll start with the F bass, and we'll have F minor, and we'll write a chord here. So for chords, use angle brackets. So what we're going to do is put the notes of F minor, which is F, A flat, and C, and we put them all in a chord, so then they get shown as a chord like this. You'll notice they went down like this. We want them to go up to be in the top half. So we'll start like this, but because we're not in relative mode, we need all of them to go up, and we want the C to be even higher than that. If we were in relative mode, they would all be relative to each other. So having, let's just demonstrate this. Actually, it's going to be easier. So if we, after this fixed, we'll put in a new thing, which is relative, and it's going to be for our chords. And again, we'll start it off with that C at the bottom, and I'll cut and paste that into there. So now we don't want all of these ups. The notes in a chord are all relative to the previous note in the chord. So if you have, well, you wouldn't ever have this in accordion music, but if you had a big chord going up like this in lots of octaves, you just put them all one after another, because then each one is going to be close to the one before it. So this second F isn't relative to the F at the start, it's relative to the C that was before it. So you can keep stacking notes like this with relative. But then the next note we're playing, which is going to be another bass F, is not relative to this note of the chord, it's relative to the first note of the chord. So within a chord, each note is relative to the previous one, but then after the chord, all of the chord except for the first one is ignored. So this F is in the same octave as that F, but we want it to go back down and be a bass note. Oh, actually, we don't want it to be a bass note at all. Looking at the music, we want it to be a C7. So this is going to be a C7. So we'll have a C, and then for our chord, we'll have C and we'll go up. And then we'll have the third, which is an E. And then we'll have the seventh, which is a B flat. And again, because the E to the B flat is a big jump, it went down instead of up to stay closer to the E. We would get a real seventh if we wrote it like that, with the B flat going up. But in accordion music, I've usually seen it written out this way, with the B flat staying close, so you can see, it's easy to see that it's a seventh because the B flat and the C are adjacent to each other. And so I'll stick with this style. Now we want another F minor for the next bar, but maybe we don't want to write it out again. We just want to use this, and we could copy and paste it, but that's boring. And again, if you make a mistake once, it will be wrong every time. So instead, we're going to use another thing that Lilypond has for repeating music, which is a variable. Now that sounds a bit too much like programming, but it's pretty simple. If you put a name, so let's call it F minor equals, and then some music, and I'm using braces here. It doesn't have to be sequential music. It could be parallel music. So it could be some stuff in between angle brackets. So if we put F minor equals some music, then that makes a new command. So instead of this, we can write F minor. And you'll notice because I copied it out of here, which was a relative, and I put it here, which is not relative, it's interpreted the octaves completely differently. Because putting a variable inside a relative block doesn't change how the notes inside the variable are interpreted. It would be really confusing if it did. It would mean you couldn't write variables that could be used in both fixed and relative. So if you want it to be relative, it's got to be relative here. And then we don't need these to be going up like that. Every time we use F minor, we'll get this same pattern. Actually, what's gone on here? Why is that only 1 rather than 2? That should be 2. Oh, no, hold on. Yeah. Because what went on here, this confused me for a moment, was this C used to be relative to the note before it, but there isn't a note before it anymore because there's just this F minor command. So it's now relative to the start. So if we take that off there, it goes back to its proper place. And so that's just something to think about. If you have written some music out and then you decide to make some of it, pull some of it out into a variable to make your own command like this, it might change the interpretation of any music after it. And it's the same with lengths as well as octaves. If if the end of the F minor music were a quaver, an eighth note, then this C would have been an eighth note before, but now it's not going to be an eighth note because there isn't a note before it anymore. So again, we're going to have 3 of these F minors, so I can do a repeat here. Repeat unfold 3. And you'll notice I've not put braces here where I was doing repeat unfold 5. I've put curly braces because it's only the next thing after repeat unfold 5 that gets repeated. So putting these in braces makes this whole expression inside the braces into one piece of music, one sequential music, and that's what's going to get repeated. And here with the variable, the whole variable or the whole command is one thing. So that gets repeated. So I'm going to show you one more way of repeating things that's especially useful for these kind of oom-pah basses, because you don't always just want the same notes in the bass each time. Usually with accordion music, you play the 5th or you play the 3rd. So you might want F, F minor, C, F minor, A flat, F minor, or something else like that. And those are still really easy to enter, even if you're not going to use a variable. So let's just say we've got the F, and since we went all the way up with this E, we need to go back down 2 octaves to get the bass F. And then we want the F minor chord, which is going to be up there. And now we want a D, maybe? No, sorry, that's nonsense. We want a C, so that's the 5th. Maybe we don't want it down there. We'll have the C that's just below the center line. And then we want the same chord again. But rather than write it out again, we can use Q. If you use Q as a note name, it just copies the previous chord, even if there was another note or a rest in between. And because it's a note name, you can put some durations with it still. So you get the previous chord, the notes of the previous chord, but you get a different duration. And of course, because Lilypond decides where to put sharps and flats separately from understanding the music that you type in, if this were across a bar line, so we say we have another crotchet there, it will know to put in the accidentals again at exactly the right time. It won't copy the accidentals. It just copies which notes are in the chord. So then we've got F, F minor, C, F minor, and then maybe in the next bar we'd want F, and we'll use Q to get F minor again, and then maybe A flat, and then F minor again. But actually we wanted to go down with the A flat, and again, even though we went down an octave here, Q is going to give us the same chord that we had previously in the same octave it was in previously. So it doesn't matter how many octaves we go down with this A flat, the F minor chord is going to be in the same place it was before. So that's just another way that you can spice up your bass lines, but still have it be very easy to enter each time. But for now, let's just go back to how it was before with the unfold repeats. So then we can carry on writing music, and we can write it in either this style with the letters, or we can write out the full chords as we choose. I might go back to writing the letters just because that's the way I prefer to write it. And you'll notice, again, because I'm going back to writing the letters, I'm putting another fixed block here. You can have as many fixeds and relatives and switch between them however you like. You can even put a relative inside a fixed block if you like. That's perfectly allowed. So you've got a lot of freedom to choose between relative and fixed note entry. So where was I up to after those F majors? It's an F diminished. And you'll notice I'm being very keen on using the repeats here, even for quite small things, just because I want to show how it works. But it's really up to you how large a piece of music you want to use the repeat command with. It's entirely up to you, and you just do what's easiest for that style of music. And I've lost where I've got up to. D7 is next. So here, if I wanted to use, I could use an A since we're on the third beat. That's pretty common. And I might want to make that whole bar one. Oh, I forgot the up there to get the D going up. And so then this is quite a common pattern. Oom-pah, oom-pah. And I might want to make this into a whole variable. Now the next chord is G minor on D. And we'd usually interpret this by putting a D in the bass. And then a G minor for the chord. And then maybe we'll stick with the G on the bass. Oops, there you go. I haven't played any of these bass interpretations to see what they sound like. Normally, if I was transcribing something like this with a lead sheet, I'd want to play it through a few times and try out different chord interpretations before I write something down. So that's my G major with a D in the bass. And then the next one's going to be G7 with a D on the bass. And what I'm actually going to do is cheat slightly. I'll just copy that line and change the M's to 7s. And maybe I'll change this to an F sharp. So that we've got the third. So just to make it a bit less repetitive there. And then the last line of the music is going to be C minor on E flat. And we need to go up 2 for C to get it up, all the way up to the top and not just below the bottom. And this is a C minor. And then A7 on E. And this wants to be an E natural. Okay. And here, well, you'll notice it looks a bit funny here because we've got a fine command for the right hand music, but we haven't for the left hand music. So we can just put it there. And you can, because the fine is not a note, you can put it inside or outside the fixed, just as long as it's inside the brace that has the whole music. So all of this stuff is going into this bass clef staff. If it was outside here, that would be a problem. It's created a whole new staff here just for the fine, which is obviously not what we wanted. We just have to make sure it's inside this brace. It's really important to get the right music inside the right braces. So it's not quite the whole piece. It's only the first half of it, but the second half is pretty similar. And this is our piece. So there's still a few things missing. What we'd like to have is a title, and there's a tempo mark that we should have here. And maybe we want to put, since it's accordion music, we might want to put the discant mark for the registration. And maybe some dynamics or some expressions. So let's go on to that. So first we want to put the title, and if we go into the notation reference, you can find out how to put this. Let's just practice looking that up. General input and output, titles and headers. Creating titles, headers, and footers. Now this starts off talking about books, but if we ignore that book section, values of titling fields are set in header blocks. So let's make a header block. So header, and of course we need to balance our braces, and we're going to say title equals, it goes like this. And if we switch back to music view, we can see it's put the title in. We also probably want to credit the composer in our music. And if we put that in, we'll see he gets his name over there. Thanks, Bert. And then by default, Lilypond puts in a nice little footer at the bottom to tell you about Lilypond. And that's called the tagline. So we can change that. Now this music has a little copyright thing at the bottom, so we can put that in. And it's copyright Bert Santilli 1976. Wow, Bert, you're getting on a bit. We can put in a copyright mark if we just open character map and copy and paste it. You can even put in emojis if you want to. So now we've got the outer structure of our file, right? And we've got the copyright mark in the right place. We also want our tempo mark. And so the tempo mark is going to go across above the top staff here. So we'll put it in right at the start of the music that's in the top staff. And it's going to say tempo for a tempo mark. And since it's crotchet equals 176, well, a crotchet's a quarter note, so we want 4. It's the same way you specify the length of any other note, equals 176. And that will give us crotchet equals 176. If we didn't have a metronome mark and we just had a text indication like that, you can also write that in. And it even styles it nicely and puts it in the right place. So let's put it back to how the composer intended. And then let's say we want to play this on a particular registration. Now, with a lot of other software, you might have to draw in a little circle by hand with the right dots in it. But Lilypond has its own way of doing the registrations. Now, Lilypond doesn't have the accordion support turned on by default, so we have to put in this funny text. Use modules lily acreg with all this punctuation around it. This just tells Lilypond to load the command that we're going to use. Then, where we want the register sign, we type in \discant, not descant, discant, and then in double quotes, the number representing the register we want. Let's say we want a musette register with 2 dots in the middle. Then we say 20. And the way this works is that you can have up to 3 numbers, and the numbers are how many dots in the top, middle, and bottom. And because it's like a number, you don't put in a leading 0. So if you want no dots at the top, you don't put in the 0 first. If you put in the 0 first, it will give you an error that's really confusing. This error is not very helpful, but if you do get that error, it's just because you put in some numbers that it doesn't understand. So if we wanted 1 dot each for 4 foot, 8 foot, and 16 foot, that's what we get. 1, 1, 1, 1 dot in each one. If we wanted something that's more like a master register, we could do 1, 2, 1, or we can do 1, 3, 1 to get 3 dots in the middle. That really would be your master register if you've got 1 on your instrument. If you just wanted a 16-foot read, you just have a 1 because you don't put in the 0 and the 0. And you don't just have to put this at the top of the music. Anywhere you want to change registers, you can just use the discant command again. And you get a new discant mark, a new registration mark. Now, this music so far has not been very expressive. Like, how loud are we supposed to play this? When do we want to get quieter or louder? And what's the phrasing? So we talked at the start about slurs on music, and you also have the same thing for phrasing marks. So just a reminder, for slurs are like the articulation marks. You put them after the length. So if we do that, that makes a slur from the note that the open bracket's attached to the note that the closed bracket's attached to. So that's a longer slur. Now, if we want a phrasing mark instead of a slur, we use backslash before the brackets. And it's got to be both the open and the closed brackets. And you'll notice it didn't look very different to start with on this, but a key difference is that you can have really long phrasing marks. So if we say this whole thing is one phrase up to that E, and I didn't put in the backslash, if we put in the backslash, there you go. That all gets one phrasing mark over the whole music. And you can even have slurs within the phrasing marks. So if we put one going from this D to this D, you have a short slur here and then a long phrasing mark that tells us that this whole phrase is, well, this whole music is one phrase. And we should probably play this with one bellows movement. But how loud are we going to play it? Well, another thing that goes along with marks and articulations is dynamics. So if we put backslash MF here, you get MF. And this works with any letters that are used in dynamics. So you can have P, F, MF, FF, PP, SFP, and so on. And then let's say we want a hairpin. So this music from here is going to get louder. So we'll put in, again, a backslash and this open angle bracket because it looks like a hairpin. Now, first, it causes an error because we haven't told it where the crescendo wants to end. Where does the hairpin want to go up to? And let's say it's going to be the whole phrase. So we'll also put that with this E here. So to end it, it's backslash exclamation mark. So now we've got an MF and a hairpin that goes all the way up to this note. And you see, I put the exclamation mark on the dotted minim, the dotted half note that's after the bar line, but the hairpin only goes up to the start of that note. So if we wanted that to continue through this note as well, we'd have to put it on the rest instead. So it goes up to the start of the rest. And you'll notice as well, Lilypond has automatically arranged and spaced out the rest of the music to make room for this hairpin. And if we put the hairpin over to the next bar, it's even moved this down to make sure that the 7 mark here doesn't collide with the hairpin. And that's something that's really good in Lilypond that a lot of music editors like Sibelius and Finale sometimes struggle with. When you put things like this, they expect you to drag things around by hand to get them in the right place and to avoid collisions. But Lilypond just does that for you. And that's one of the things that makes Lilypond's output look very professional, even if you're not a professional at all. One final thing that I would like to change about this part is something that's not actually used very much in accordion music, which is an ambitus. This is a thing that comes from vocal music, and it just tells you the range of the music. Obviously, that's very useful for singers. They want to be able to look at the piece and see if they can sing this piece. Is it within their range? And I think it's useful for accordions as well, and I'll show you why in a minute. But first, we'll show how to put it on. We want the ambitus to be on this right-hand staff, and we put in this text. And I'm just going to paste it in like this. I always just copy it from previous pieces of music that I've done rather than typing it every time. So this with command, when you add a staff, it adds extra features to the staff. There are all kinds of different things that Lilypond calls engravers, and they're just for controlling different aspects of how the staff is printed out. And this one, the ambitus engraver, is in charge of printing this thing on the left, which is called an ambitus. And you can see it shows us that the lowest note is a C and the highest note is a D. And why that's useful is, for instance, I have an accordion where the lowest note on the right hand is a G. The keyboard starts on a G. But a lot of accordion music is written assuming that your right hand starts with an F, that you have that bottom F below middle C. So if I start playing that music and then I get halfway through the piece and find out it's, you know, doing a nice scale that goes down to an F, then I'm in trouble. But if I know at the start that it's going to go down to an F, then maybe I can shift the whole thing up an octave and play it on a lower register, or I can choose to play a different part in the piece if it's for more than one accordion. I could do something about it. So whenever I engrave music for accordion, I always put this ambitus mark at the start, just so there's an easy way to tell whether you can play it on your keyboard or not. And Lilypond makes it really easy to do this. It's just one command at the start. So let's say we're happy with this piece now, and we would like to get a PDF that we can give to everyone. Let's first save our text file. So we've got an untitled file at the moment, and this is a bit risky because, you know, if my computer crashes, it's going to lose all my changes. So I'm going to save. It'll automatically suggest a file name based on the composer and the title. So if we save that, immediately what it will do is it will re-engrave, and you're like, well, where's this file that it's making this sheet music going? And it puts it in a PDF with the same name as your Lilypond file. So it goes like this .pdf. But this PDF that it's making has all of this information for letting you click on the notes, and that makes the PDF file quite big. So if you're going to give it to other people, it's best to go to the Lilypond menu and do engrave publish. The default one is preview, and if you do publish, it just runs it again. It doesn't take any longer than it normally does. It goes in the same place, but now it doesn't have any of this information for clicking on things. You can see if I mouse over notes, nothing is happening. If I click on things on the left, it's not highlighting anything on the right. And that's because this PDF doesn't have that information, but that makes it about 1/10 the file size in publish mode as it is in preview mode. So if you're going to give it to people, it's best to do that. And that's on the Lilypond menu, engrave publish. So that's how you make some accordion sheet music. So in this video, we have started from our slightly ugly lead sheet in a handwritten style. And of course, you could be starting from some handwritten music or proper accordion music, or an old photocopy that's all dark gray everywhere and hard to read, or maybe something that's just been written in a really quirky style that you find hard to play. So we've started from our lead sheet. We've put in the right hand, we've put in the left hand, we've put in any accordion specifics that we want, like discant marks. We've added dynamics and changed them around, put hairpins how we like. And then we've ended up with a PDF that we can give to other musicians, and they'll be able to play it just like we do.
So there we have it. This video is just an introduction, and Lilypond can do a lot more that we haven't seen. I already have some ideas for follow-up videos to go deeper, but I hope you'll go ahead and write some music without waiting for me. Maybe you've already got a tatty old handwritten part in your pad, and you're going to go off and fix it in Lilypond right now. If you get stuck, have a look in the notation reference. And if you can't find it there, pop a question in the comments, and it'll help me to decide what to cover in my next video. Whatever music you want to play, just give it a try, and don't forget to have fun.